There are many different ways to make your race car faster, from spending countless of hours in the wind tunnel to perfecting the aerodynamics, developing state-of-the-art lightweight components and technology just to give you that extra edge over your rivals, and trying everything you can to get as much power out of the engine as possible before it blows up. Adding power alone leaves you with many possible routes to take. Do you try using a more powerful fuel like methanol or alcohol mixtures? Do you rev the engine higher? What about adding a turbo O2? Maybe a supercharger? Or why not both? It's a slippery slope that can lead to some questionable decisions. The epitome of the everlasting quest for more power is this theory: more engine, more power. And not enlarging your 4-liter engine to a 5-liter one, I mean literally. Why have one engine when you can have two? Many have tried this theory in different kinds of racing series, so let's take a look at a few of them and see how, and more importantly if, they even worked at all. Before we take a look at some truly outrageous stuff, you must know there are two different methods of adding an extra engine to your car. One of them is by merging two existing engines together. Arguably the most famous examples of this are the V16 and H16 engines from BRM in the early days of Formula 1. In the 50s they put two 750cc V8s together to create the most powerful engine on the grid at the time, and if that wasn't enough, it was supercharged as well. But the sheer weight and complexity resulted in terrible reliability, and the car the engine was dropped in, the Type 15, never truly got up to its potential. But at least there was some potential, which can't be said about the P83 several years later and its H16. Instead of two 8-cylinders connected back to back, they were now stacked on top of each other. It was too heavy, too complicated, too unreliable, and worst of all, too weak. If you thought that was the last somewhat twin-engine F1 car, then you'd be wrong, as Porsche, and more importantly their engine builder guru Hans Metzger, tried the same approach when they returned to F1 as an engine supplier in the early 90s. Their Type 3512 V12 engine used in the Footworks FA12 was based on two V6 engines merged together, with power takeoff not at the end of the engine like in any other car, but the center. The same method was used on the Flat 12 used in the Porsche 917, and it's safe to say that proved to be quite successful. But lightning didn't strike twice, as the engine was not powerful enough, horribly unreliable, and too big. Literally. It didn't even fit in the original version of the car. Footwork had to put the engine in their older A11C for the first few races, while the rest of the team focused on modifying the FA12. So German and British attempts at creating a twin-engined Formula 1 car weren't exactly that successful. But what about the Italians? To see their attempts, we'll have to go back to the 30s when Formula 1 didn't even exist yet. Instead, it's the Wild West of Grand Prix racing, a world filled with confusing rule sets, big cars and even bigger engines. Alfa Romeo was one of the many brands who was perpetually making their engines bigger and bigger, with success too. The many variants of the 8C were some of the finest racing machines of the early 30s, thanks to their superb supercharged inline-8 engines. Alfa Romeo's racing dynasty was practically built upon the engines created by their chief engineer, Vittorio Jano. But just like Metzger with the Footworks V12, he too created a bit of an outsider, because in 1931 he came up with this, the Tipo A. Two 6-cylinder engines side by side, good for a combined 240 horsepower, each with their own supercharger, gearbox and differential. This car didn't just have two engines, it had two entire drivetrains. This obviously was far more complicated than it needed to be, and after a few races, most of which ended in a DNF, it was replaced by the Tipo B, which was powered by an 8C derived straight 8 again. Compared to the Tipo A, the Tipo B did work and was immensely successful. That was of course until the Germans came along with their Auto Union and Mercedes rocket ships. Drastic measures had to be taken to try and keep up with these dominant machines. One of these was found again with Alfa Romeo. The leader of Alfa Romeo's racing division was some random guy named Enzo Ferrari. You may have heard of him. He figured he could double the amount of horsepower by dropping a second engine in the back of a Tipo B, thus creating the Bimotore. The now 540 horsepower strong behemoth was still rear-wheel drive, as the gearbox that was located at the center of the car had two drive shafts attached to it, one for each wheel. This way too complicated system combined with catastrophic weight distribution meant that the car was extremely hard to drive. It was only meant to race at high-speed tracks like Monza and the Avesring, but these tracks still have corners too, and every time the Bimotore got to one, it would decimate its tires in the process. But at the very least the car worked really well in a straight line. Before retiring the car for good, Tadzio Nuvolari managed to go 364 km/h in it on a stretch of highway for a record attempt, an insane speed considering this took place in 1935. The examples shown so far have proven that placing two engines in one car is pretty complicated and leads to some unique problems. The Alfa's main problems were getting two engines to drive one axle. It's no surprise then that the easier and far more common solution to twin-engine race cars is to have one engine power one axle, effectively turning them into all-wheel drive cars. And if you say all-wheel drive motorsport, you're obviously led to off-road racing. The Dakar Rally and Pikes Peak, back when it was still a mixed surface event, have seen quite a fair share of twin-engined cars compete. And compared to their circuit racing colleagues, these were quite a bit more competitive. Perhaps one of the most famous drivers in the Race to the Clouds history is Nobuhiro Tajima, or as most people know him, Monster Tajima. But before he raced his famous red Suzuki Escudo prototype up the hill, he first took not one, but two different twin-engine cars to the top. His first attempt came in 1989 with the first version of the Cultus, known as the Suzuki Swift over in Europe. He and his team, with full factory Suzuki backing, decided to stick a massive turbocharger to its little 1.6-litre 4-cylinder engine, clone it and drop another one in the back. Each engine would power one axle, resulting in an immense 800 combined horsepower. It took some time to perfect the formula as its first attempt resulted in a DNF. But by 1993 the little grocery getter had 2 unlimited division class wins and 1 second place overall finish under its belt. Lessons learned from the Cultus carried over into the Escudo, which retained the same engine layout formula but now with some 100 horsepower more. So that's 900 horsepower in a little box that only weighed 900 kilograms. In 1995, Monster Tajima finally achieved his first overall victory with it after a close battle with that other Pikes Peak legend, Rod Millen. To this day it remains the only twin-engine car to win Pikes Peak outright. It wasn't the only twin-engine car to win in its class, however, as it shares that honor with something completely different and much bigger. The CFI Red Racer, based on a Kenworth T2000 sleeper cab, this 26,000 pound or almost 12-ton heavy behemoth featured 6 turbos, 3 for each of the 2 massive Cummins diesel engines. The truck was a rolling testbed and massive publicity tool. Several versions or evolutions of it were made and raced up the peak a total of 5 times, but also showed up at small drag strips for exhibition passes and even set some speed records at the Bonneville Salt Flats. I can't actually find the exact amount of horsepower the version you see here sliding up the mountain made, but let's just assume it was 11 million, and God knows how much torque this monster produced. It would be a crime to talk about a fast twin-engine racing truck if I didn't mention the most famous one of all, the DAF X1 Turbo Twin 2. The Dutch DAF Truck Company had been racing in the Dakar Rally since 1980, winning its class 3 times. Starting from 1986, they expanded their fleet with a series of twin-engined examples, with the 1988 X1 as the fastest of them all. It was entered in the race together with a slightly less powerful X2 version. That one would focus on the truck category, while the X1 was allowed to go all out and try and beat not only the other trucks, but the cars as well for an overall victory. With well over 1000 horsepower thanks to 2 11-litre diesel engines with 3 turbochargers each, the massive aluminium space frame truck was good for a 0 to 100 km/h sprint in 7.8 seconds. Not bad at all for something that's 10 tons heavy. The clip of it driving next to Ari Vatane's Group B derived Peugeot 405 says it all. Sadly, during the 1988 race, the second truck crashed, resulting in the tragic death of one of its co-drivers, Kees van Loevestein. His untimely death prompted the immediate withdrawal of the other DAF from the rally. Not long after, the company stopped racing altogether. Not to end the video on a sour note, let's head back to the world of circuit racing to take a look at what is, in my opinion, the strangest and most fascinating multiple-engined race car of them all. And we find it in one of the most exciting eras of racing, the 1970s Canadian-American Challenge Cup, better known as Can-Am. And no, it's not the infamous Chaparral 2J, with its pair of 2-stroke snowmobile engines in the back. Those were only for sucking the car to the ground. Actual drive came from a, in Can-Am terms, rudimentary Chevy V8. Because when everyone is racing around with massive 8-litre plus V8s, you wouldn't want to drive around with a little 2-stroke powering your car, would you? But what about 4 of them? Enter the Max IT Special. Its creator, Jack Hoare, figured that instead of joining in on the just put a bigger V8 in it hype train, he'd go the opposite route and focus on creating a lightweight package. And to power that package, he'd put a total of 4 2-stroke 800cc snowmobile engines in it, come up with an astronomically complicated transmission system to link them all together, and sent the full combined 440 horsepower to all 4 wheels that miraculously somehow worked. But if you've ever had to fine-tune a 2-stroke engine, let alone a racing one, you'd know they can be a bit temperamental. Now imagine that times 4. That's what the Max IT Special Experience was. The car never ran 100% right, and it showed in the practice times of the only racing event it ever showed up at, the second to last round of the 1970 season at Laguna Seca. A 1 minute 29.4 second lap was the best it could do. For comparison, the Chaparral qualified in just under 59 seconds. That monumental gap in pace, and the fact it devoured spark plugs like no other, was enough for it to not race at all in terms of safety. The ambitious quadruple 2-stroke race car was retired, having never driven a single racing lap in its half-a-day-long career. The cars and trucks covered in this video are just a select few from a surprisingly big collection of twin-engine race cars. There is a lot more weird stuff out there, but perhaps that's material for another video in the future, so subscribe if you don't want to miss out on that one. Let me know which one was your favorite, and feel free to suggest more unusual twin-engine contraptions in the comments below.